Hey, welcome back. You thought we were gone, but nope. We're going to be here a long time. I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're still going to be here a long time. Like I just said, we are on episode 29. 29. I'm doing this really bad with my thumbs. We're on episode 29. So, non-school year stuff, because we're both done with the year. Hot diggity dog. Tonight's topic, kind of a fun one we've been meaning to discuss. We also have another one for next week, so we kind of got 2 weeks worth of material. Bark, go ahead. Tell us what we're talking about tonight.
So we're here to talk to you tonight about should college athletes get paid to play. It's been a topic that's been around for, it's really been going on for about like half a decade.
Yep.
On the down low. And the real reason that anybody knows about it, is because everybody loved playing NCAA sports games.
Yes.
These are the last titles that were made by EA Sports. So NCAA football 14 over here with Desmond Howard, right, who had a very short NFL career and now coaches.
Desmond Howard?
Am I wrong?
I thought that was Denard Robinson.
Oh, Denard Robinson. You're right. Sorry. Desmond Howard was a few years before that. That was on the.
He's a Hall of Famer, isn't he?
He is. But he was on a box. He was on like NCAA like 10 or like 12 or something. My bad. Michigan gets a lot of cover art love.
They do. Anyway, Denard Robinson, I think, still plays for Jacksonville.
He coaches for Jacksonville. He is.
Oh, okay.
In charge of offensive quality control or something like that.
There you go.
According to the Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, I believe that. So, and then
you have NCAA men's basketball 10 over here.
Blake Griffin.
Sure.
I believe so. Yep, Blake Griffin. So,
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So, driving factors, the reason we're showing these last two games, one, I'm a huge fan. I did not own NCAA basketball 10, but I own almost every single NCAA football game. And I used to love playing them and like getting to be a coach and recruit and go get different people and stuff like that. It was so much fun. But we just don't have anything like it now. I mean, like you can play Madden and stuff like that where you can draft players and you sign them. But like this was the one where you could go out and spend time getting different people depending on what kind of offense you wanted to run. You could create all that. So super fun. However, the reason that we said those are the last two is because there was a lawsuit involving EA Sports and the NCAA. I believe, what was the year on here?
2014.
2014 was? Okay.
Ed O'Bannon.
Yep. Oh, Ed O'Bannon. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So again,
Ed O'Bannon played college basketball. Interesting. So he sues them in 2014. I think he was featured in the 2010 game as a legacy player. Like we talked about Desmond Howard when I made that screw up. And so for like college basketball, they put him in there, and he played, like he graduated from UCLA in 95. So, it's 15 years after he's even played. He only played in the NBA for a few years. Then he went and played overseas and in like Italy and somewhere else, I think. Yeah. Wasn't super successful as a pro, but for whatever reason, like UCLA made a great run that year. And I think they beat Arkansas to win the NCAA championship. And so he was put in as a legacy player, and his kids were like playing the game, and they're like, dude, like, Dad, come here, you're in the game. Or like somebody's like, dude, you're in the game. He's like, what do you mean I'm in the game? And like he walks up and sees people playing this video game, and he's like, normally what happens in a sports game, like Madden, like MLB The Show, any of those, FIFA.
Yeah, NBA 2K.
NBA, yeah, is that there is an agreement between the league to use the uniforms and logos of the teams, which the NCAA gives the blessing for college sports. And then the Players Association essentially has a blanket statement that gives the right to use the players' likenesses in the video games, which is why, like, like Richard Sherman looks like Richard Sherman, and why Russell Wilson throws the ball different than, like, Brett Favre would. Those are the cool things that they kind of put in there. Or like in the 2K, the baseball games, the way that guys like swing the bat and their batting posture.
The way they throw,
it's one of the cool things that they would do.
Yeah.
Like Ichiro would have like that slap bunt style when he'd swing the ball, where he's almost like running out of the box.
Yep.
So it makes them feel different. Now the problem with that, well, makes me quick aside. Barry Bonds would never sign it for like the Major League Baseball, and so like back when Barry Bonds was a thing, like there was this random. I think his name was like Josh Dowd. Instead of Barry Bonds, it was Josh Dowd, but he was just as jacked as Barry Bonds. His name just wasn't Barry Bonds, and he was white instead of being black. But if you played baseball, I can't remember if it was what baseball game in particular it was, but you essentially knew like to like hit him with a pitch or walk him or whatever, or just give up a jack. But the problem with the NCAA is that there is no players association, because a players association is essentially a bargaining unit for players because they're employees of the league or of these businesses that operate in a league. So this kind of brings it to this point where, a lot of people that play college sports, and really realistically, we're only talking about two sports, the two that we showed video games for.
We're talking about basketball and football. I mean, there really isn't, like, you look at NCAA and stuff like that, there really isn't much call for any other sport. There's nobody's asking for the other ones. And if there are, let me rephrase, I'm sure there's people asking for them, but there's not enough for EA to go out and try and make a game for it.
To make it economically viable.
Right.
So the average out of the, what was it, like 127 like D1 like top tier college football teams, they average $31 million per team, for football, and then it drops to $8 million in revenue for basketball, for men's basketball, and then women's basketball, which is the highest women's sport for revenue, but still comes in like sixth, I think, overall, or like fifth overall, is like 1.8 million.
Yeah.
So when you look at the economics of it, there's still that gender disparity in like how it's being promoted. Like the one like shining example I can think of where like it flip flops, and there's probably like the one female sports team that is more popular than the male sports team is the women's world, like U.S. national team for soccer.
Absolutely. And so anyway, so like what we're talking about is or go ahead and finish explaining the lawsuit, I guess.
So anyways, what Ed O'Bannon was upset about was that his likeness was being used in the video game, and he's not getting, like when Russell Wilson's in a football game, like Russell Wilson gets paid. Like everybody in the NFLPA, NFL Players Association, gets a small piece of the pie. Yep. And that's just not true for college athletes. And so it feeds into this disparity where they're saying the NCAA is profiting from the, the skills and likenesses of all of these athletes. And like NCAA football always tried to get away from it because they would never use player names, but like Gardner Minshew, if they had made one like that, would look like Gardner Minshew with the funny mustache. He'd wear the same number. He would just be, quarterback number, 16, I think. That's just the way they did it. But everybody knew that was, and it was made to look like, and they had the same playing style. If they were a drop back quarterback, they were a drop back quarterback. If somebody was a scrambling quarterback, they were a scrambling quarterback. Yeah. And so the NCAA tried to get away with it by saying, oh, nobody has their name in there. But every year, because it's such a great game, and I just got rid of my Xbox 360, I just gave it away. Some kid's very lucky. You can still upload. The last roster update I had on it actually had Gardner Minshew. So it was, for like 2 seasons ago of college football, because people are still modifying rosters, updating the names so that you can play upload the rosters for the upcoming season, even though the game is, 14s, which means released in 13, almost 7 years old.
Yep.
People are still doing that, and it's a system that's almost going to be 2 generations old.
Yep.
But anyway, long story short, they sue and they win, and essentially what they did, based on the number of games that a player was in, and like how accurate their likeness was, they had kind of a slide scale. Ed O'Bannon made a class action lawsuit. He was joined by more than 29,000 other athletes. So when they won the lawsuit, you got somewhere in the realm of the top tier people got $7,200, and the bare minimum was $1,200.
Yeah.
So again, it's more of a moral victory than it is a financial victory. But part of that is because there's so many people, like you were talking about, there's so many college athletes. Like if you think about it, D1, D2, and because there's flux between basketball and football, there's like 230-ish teams. And if you figure everybody for football carries 50 guys, like I'm not a math genius, but that's a lot of people.
Right. So what's interesting too is like we're coming to this question now, is that's also a part of it. Like, so this is the one thing that like gets brought up, is because they know EA Sports and was a part of the lawsuit, and they no longer make these games, right? And like we've told you, they're amazing. If you ever get your hands on one with an old Xbox or GameCube or whatever, you can play them. They're so much fun. But the other question is, like we talk about, NCAA athletes have a designation of amateur. And amateur athletes do not get paid for what they do, right? And so that's why, like, when you talk about these athletes, they forego seasons in the NCAA to go pro. And in football, there is a draft, so you go and you get drafted, and you can apply. You can say, I think I'm the best, and I'm going to go off, and you can go undrafted and not get picked by a single team, and nobody calls you, and you cannot go back to your football team because you declared that you are no longer an amateur. You're going to be a professional. Now, basketball is a little different. They've kind of worked out some different kinks. You can go and test your spot. My example was what's his name? Kispert from Gonzaga is going to go test his spot in the NBA draft. And I don't know if the NBA draft has happened yet. I don't follow it close enough. But if he doesn't like where he's picked, he can go back to Gonzaga, right? And there is actual talk of the football saying, like, hey, if we don't get picked where we want to go pick, can we get back? And, it's one of those things. Football is such a collision sport that it's a huge risk if you put yourself in for another season at the college level. You can go from being a number one, like, top round pick, and you bust your knee, and you might go undrafted. It can be that much of a slide.
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at Joe Burrow. Last year, if Joe Burrow would have entered the draft, he wouldn't have gone number one overall. He would have gone in like the 5th round, very obscure, didn't have a great season his junior year. Comes back, has a great senior year, boom, amazing. But on the flip side, you have Tua from Alabama, who, what did he do, broke his hip? Or tore a muscle in his hip?
Multiple things. Yeah, his hip was the thing. I didn't think he broke. Yeah, he broke a hip, I thought.
Yeah, I think he broke his hip because they're talking about he got drafted by the Dolphins in the 1st round. But he got drafted later because there's concerns about his durability.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's one of the things, like you were talking about, like, he's got that, taking that chance. And so I think football and, like, the NBA and the NFL have always been kind of different in the sense that, like, Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, like, back then there was a rule that you didn't have to go to college at all, and you could just walk off, graduate high school and go to the NBA, which those two guys did, but they're, like, 2 very rare athletes to do that. In the NFL, no 18-year-old can walk off the field and then as a 18 or 19-year-old go play in the NFL and not get utterly destroyed. Right. Just because the physical nature of it, and like you literally are like livestock. You have to be like fed and like conditioned to get into like game ready shape. As much as you look at Brett Favre and go, that looks like my, little league coach who just like put on a helmet and he's out there, or Mike Vanderjagt.
There you go.
Who was the kicker? There was the kicker, Morton Anderson, that used to have like
Yep,
one
yep.
bar,
Anderson.
the one bar. Anyway, they're athletes. But
what's crazy though is now is like, if you're gonna, here's where we run into trouble, is if you're going to make this video game and you're gonna compensate these people, you're compensating them. They're no longer considered amateur athletes if you're going to pay them. And I don't know, I could be wrong. Like I'm summarizing, right? I'm doing very broad strokes. There might be little niches here and there that I'm not fully aware on amateur status versus pro status and dealing with compensation. So the question is, like, should we pay these people, right? They're entertainers like us. They're the NCAA is $1 billion industry between all of its sports. And then it goes to say, okay, do you pay just the football players and the basketball players, right? Because you're going to make video games of them. Do you, and then you're paying a guy for, I don't know, let me spitball. I'll just say, you're paying Eastern football players for their likeness, which again, like if our friend Stephen Wallace's son, Kellen Wallace, he would get like a check, right, for being an Eastern lineman. And I don't think he's going to go out and be a starter to start the year off as a freshman. And so, but he would still get a check because you would have to put his name on the roster for Eastern. So I will say that I started this conversation saying that, yes, like I think they should pay them. Because I think they should be compensated. I think there's a lot of under the table stuff that happens that, again, neither of us were college recruited athletes or anything like that, so we don't know the experience. But we've met a couple of people who have been in high places and have said that some, not shady stuff, but some gifts and money and things are attempted to be exchanged. And so it's kind of like, okay, like, it's happening under the table. Could we do something where it can happen over the table? Maybe it's like an initial signing bonus, right? Like, so I picked, I don't know, but I picked, I'm not going to pick a Washington school because I'll just train. I picked Notre Dame, right? Because that's where I always had a backwards hat from Notre Dame in high school. So I picked Notre Dame. Notre Dame says, okay, you picked us, great, here's like 40 grand or whatever. And that's what I get for it, right? Like, and I could be great, I could be terrible, right? Like, and I get my scholarship or whatever. Which, because again, like depending on the school you go to, scholarships can be worth a lot of money, right? Like a scholarship at Central Washington University, that's not that much money when you compare it to a scholarship to like Notre Dame. So, they work hard, they entertain a lot of people, and we're right now during this COVID thing, we're looking at like how are we going to be able to do college sports? That's a big part of our lives. I was so bummed when they canceled March Madness, and it was totally reasonable, and I understand it wholeheartedly, and it's the safety of the players and everybody. I'm not upset with the decision. I'm just upset because I enjoy watching the March Madness tournament so much.
$700 million revenue.
Yep, gone.
$700 million in revenue. One of the problems, though, is because they're college sports, you have to abide by Title IX. And so, like, that really is what complicates it, where it's like, if you're going to pay football, you've got to pay, women's soccer, you got to pay the equestrian team, you got to pay the lacrosse team, and it's got to be equitable. And maybe you have something different where you say, well, there's a football game, so the football guys, the thing that's coming through. California signed a law called Fair Pay for Play Act in September, I think they signed it, or October, somewhere in there. And they pretty much, what they did is they said that players have the right to use their likeness to go out and sign third-party deals.
Oh, okay.
So if they want to go out and sign up and be like a spokesman for Powerade or Gatorade or Nike shoes or And One or whatever, they can do that. And I think that's probably the most realistic thing to do.
Yep.
Like you think about like Zion. Like Zion could definitely had his own like clothing line and like shoe in college. But when you try and pay everybody, a lot of people are saying it like the haves are still going to have, like the Bamas and the Auburns, and like they're still going to be able to make money in Texas, Notre Dame. But the schools that, like are in the Sun Belt, your good old like University of Louisiana Lafayette, or like Monroe, Louisiana Tech, Arkansas State, all of my favorite teams to start a dynasty with in NCAA 14, and then eventually go win the SEC with, dominate.
Yep.
The last one I can think of was Eastern Michigan. Yep. Eastern Michigan was my last one that I took from rags to riches.
Big Ten?
Yeah, baby.
All right.
But anyway, that's where it really becomes a problem, is if you try and pay everybody. The other thing is that right now, a lot of licensing is tied up by, what's the word? Conferences.
Yeah.
Because conferences have come out with their own television networks. I buy Pac-12 so I can watch Wazoo play. Yep. And then there's Pac-12, there's ACC, there's SEC, there's Big Ten. I think the Big 12 is the only power conference that doesn't have a network right now. But part of that's complicated because ESPN has a venture with the University of Texas by itself for Longhorn
football
sports. Like they have like a UT Austin sports network.
Nice.
Just like I think the Yankees have one too. Like I think there's a Yankees network where you can buy just Yankee baseball. And that doesn't mean just baseball north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
That's only the Bronx Bombers. Yeah. And so like for me, like when I look at it at that point where I think trying to pay them all isn't realistic, I think allowing them to go out and sign promotional deals is acceptable. My wife brought up, because she's a very smart woman, well, are they limited? Like, can a college athlete go out and be a sponsor of a beer company? Can he go, if they live in Washington State where recreational marijuana is legal, can they be a sponsor for recreational marijuana, even though that's a banned substance for their sport? Does the college get to have the ability to say, like, have like an honor code or like a veto? Like, no, you can't be a sponsor of, like Hustler magazine, and play basketball for us. We don't think that's becoming of Gonzaga or Wazoo, you know what I mean? So, I mean, there's all kinds of other legal issues that come up. But I think the stopgap is that you let kids or let athletes, young adults, be able to profit from their likeness. If people want to give them money and have them be a sponsor, be sponsors, or be a spokesperson, let them be a spokesperson.
Yeah.
The other issue is I think there should be it shouldn't be left to the ethics or the ethos, as I read in an article, of a university that if a scholarship athlete like blows their knee out, technically a college can just revoke their scholarship, and that kid that was getting a full ride to Stanford or Notre Dame, I'm just thinking of these big time schools, Michigan State, they can technically turn around and say, we're going to take that scholarship away from you because you're broken and we can't, you're not going to help us make a national championship run. And we're going to give it to this other kid who just graduated, who's healthy. Now, and that's where people get upset, because that kid just literally gave up their body and is now like, to a certain extent disabled or not able to perform that activity anymore, but never received any compensation.
Yep.
So I think there should be some sort of like scholarship protection fund where if you get injured, you at least get a partial scholarship or something that would allow you to finish your degree at that institution.
If you're going off that, you should get, and I'm not in charge of money for an institution, but I think that look what happens with football players, right? Like NFL, look what happens. And I know I'm talking about pro, but I still get my check if I'm hurt. I still get my check if I'm out for the whole season, still get paid. Like, it's just a risk you take as a business. You sign this player. It's like Jadeveon Clowney right now, right? Like, there's Jadeveon Clowney's a hell of a football player, one of the best football players in the league. You can make the argument for it. But since COVID, he can't be individually tested. And so teams are like, we know you're the best football player, but you had these injuries. We can't take the risk of giving you the money you want right now. And I think and so like, you take that risk as a college by signing that athlete, and then I think you need to treat them as such. And maybe you put them to work doing something else, right? Like they go into your scouting thing, or like a great example that I have is my one of my ex-girlfriends, her cousin was a punter for East Carolina University, and he got I think he got hurt. Yeah, he got hurt. But there's also a younger punter that could punt further than him, and so he was on his way out, and they basically called him in and said, "Hey, you're hurt. You got two options. You can get this surgery, and there's no guarantee it'll work or anything like that, and you'll be laid up for this amount of time, and then you might be able to punt again, or you can not get the surgery, like just rehab it and stuff like that, but you'll never punt the way you punted again." And he elected not to get the surgery because he's like, why would I going to do this if you can't guarantee it'll work? And so he got put on he got an offer from the equipment manager to like work as an equipment manager, and now he's the head equipment manager for the 49ers. I think still he might be. I don't know. I've seen him on TV a couple times, but it's like it's those types of things like where you take care of that athlete, to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I mean, I feel like that needs to happen, especially when people come, like they're taking a big chance, and let's be real. Let's look at some of our athletes. Some of the best stories that we always hear and we see on ESPN is the player who came from nothing, and he happened to be good at his sport, and this was going to be his opportunity to buy his family out of their situation and move them to a place where they wanted to be. And so it's like, man, like that athlete could still do it if you could give them the education. So
you're taking advantage of them. And the other thing that people get upset about is that head coaches, Nick Saban makes $8 million a year, more than $8 million a year. When Mike Leach was at Wazoo, he was making $4 million a year. Chris Peterson was making like $4.5 million, I think. The lowest paid head coach in the Pac-12, I think last season at Cal, makes $1.5 million.
And to top it off, think about where that money's coming from. Chris Peterson is the highest Washington State employee in terms of salary. Not the governor, not like the people who are responsible for your health care, job safety, anything like that. Nope. It's a football coach. Is the highest state and paid employee.
And that's true in a lot of states.
Yes. So.
And the other thing is that these programs that are making a ton of money just turn around and spend it. If you ever look at the University of Oregon's campus and you look at their weight room facilities, or if you look at, I think the one that was coming up was it Clemson or I think it was Clemson. Like they have a bowling alley like in their facility, and they use that to recruit. I was just looking at USA Today, and like even the University of Texas, which their revenue, the amount of money that comes in, not profit, but revenue is like over $200 million, but they spend over $200 million a year, and they only their like profit or this surplus, because it's not a profit, they're a non-profit, so it's a surplus. Their surplus of money is like only like barely $10 million, which in the grand scheme of a university isn't a ton. And it's just kind of crazy that way. In the Pac-12, do you know how many teams their athletic departments turn a surplus?
In the Pac-12?
Yep. So out of 12, how many do you think turn a profit or turn a surplus? Sorry.
I'll say 5.
2.
Okay. So can I guess which ones?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna say the University of Washington turns a profit.
It does.
Okay, or not profit, a surplus.
A surplus.
And then I'm gonna say I want to say Oregon, but I feel like that's a trap. Like it's not gonna be Oregon. It's gonna be like somebody else. But I'll say Oregon.
You're right. Those are the two. It's Washington and Oregon.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing to think about, the other thing that people argue about right now is that when leagues are expanding or conferences are expanding, they're not looking at competitive edge and competitive advantage to bring people in. They're looking at TV market share.
Yep.
So when the Pac-12 expanded, when it first started being talked about, people were like Hawaii, Fresno State, Boise State, bring those guys in. But we brought in Colorado and Utah, like much love to the Buffs and the Utes.
Yep.
But the reason we bring them in is because their market share, the Denver broadcasting area is like in the top 25, as is Salt Lake City. Or Salt Lake City is like 30, I think.
Yeah.
Boise, way down the list.
Yep.
Fresno, way down the list.
Hawaii.
And Hawaii even further down the list.
Yep.
So, economics are a part of what is driving decisions in college athletics. And simply the athletes are asking, if we're putting our bodies on the line, don't we deserve a piece of the pie?
Yep.
And I think the easiest way or the best way to probably do that is to provide them and let them have, and the NCAA the board of directors came out and said that college athletes can come out and sign a third-party deal.
Yep.
It's just, we need to, get that going. And with COVID, that was just passed this year. And with COVID, that makes it really hard to get that going. But hopefully in the future, much love, college athletes.
Yep.
I enjoy a good Coug game.
I mean,
college game day back to Pullman every year.
Yeah, seriously. And I love waking up on Saturday morning and just turning on College Game Day and just hearing them talk about all the games. And they always pull one that's like a lesser known game, and they talk about it in like the pick'ems and stuff like that. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, basketball season, I'm a huge college basketball fan. I'm not a huge pro fan. Because college basketball, like I said, kids are usually playing 1 year. So like, you're like, holy crap, like they got to give it everything they got to try and do it what they can do in this 1 year. So anything else to add?
No, I mean, we could talk for hours about this. It's a really complex, topic. People love sports. That's one of the things I asked my kids at my last Avid meeting of the year. I said, what topics would you guys watch? And they're like, conspiracy theories or sports. And so because of our professionalism, we chose sports.
We covered conspiracy theories in the last one.
Oh yeah, we did that. # love you, Frost.
Yep. And Bergman.
And Bergman.
So, all right. Well, hey, we got another topic coming up. Are we going to reveal our topic now, or do we want to hang on to it and just surprise people from now on?
I think we make them wait, because that's what we're doing, man. Build suspense.
Love it. So, yeah. Fun topic to talk about. If you have a comment, shoot us a comment either on our Instagrams or our Facebook. Maybe we'll make an Instagram and a Facebook for this too. That way people can just leave questions and stuff like that on there whenever they think of one. But yeah, until next time, I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're going to be here until YouTube kicks us off. So have a great night, everybody.
Be safe.
And be well.